Assalamualaikum and a very good day to Doctor and my fellow classmates. My name is Aiman bin Roslan. Matrix number 161284, and I will be presenting on language policing is harming, not helping the fight for gender equality. So, ladies and gentlemen, so what is language policing? We've heard about it so much, language policing. So according to Buchholz 2011, language policing refers to enforcing the correct way of speaking or writing to align with perceived social ideals. Often focuses on terms related to gender, race, ability or identity. Usually these types of language policing is usually done by the LGBTQ movements, usually when they identify as a certain gender that rather than the ones that they are assigned when they were birthed. This is language policing. So now we'll talk about we've talked about language policing, and now I will talk about the purpose of gender equality, since we are talking about language policing is harming gender equality. So we need to know first, what is gender equality? What are the core goals of gender equality? So according to UN Women 2020, true gender equality aims for equal rights and for opportunities, safety and dignity for all genders. And they are usually addressing issues like domestic abuse and sexual harassment, and usually the core goals as well is challenging traditional norms that restrict individuals based on gender. Like, for example, men are supposed to be the one holding responsibilities, women are supposed to be at home in the kitchen and all that kind of stuff. They are fighting these social norms that has been around for a few thousand years. So they are fighting this stigma or stereotypes of gender-based roles. So now we have an idea of what actually is language policing and what is equality. What does equality mean? So now we will look at how language policing can harm. So there are 4 points that I would like to focus on. For this slide, there's only 2. The first one would be how it would affect it is by alienating allies. So how does it work actually? So according to Cameron 2012, overcorrecting language without context often results in defensiveness or withdrawal from the cause. And the second one would be focus shift. What it means by this is by when one is too focused on policing language, such as, oh, this person actually identifies as they, them or Zer, it actually shifts the focus away from matters that you actually that needs focus on, like equal pay, domestic violence. Like in the description it says, excessive focus on wording risk, sidelining urgent issues that needs to be looked at, such as domestic violence and equal pay. Okay, so now for the third and the fourth point. So the third one, it creates fear of speaking up. So people avoiding the topic of gender in fear of saying the wrong thing. So this usually happens nowadays. Usually we call it now as cancel culture, which is quite prevalent in Gen Zs nowadays. People might say the wrong thing not out of spite, but maybe out of mistake, but most of them take it to heart too much. So hence the cancel culture, and hence people are too afraid of speaking up because of cancel culture. And the fourth one is the idea of free speech is a joke. So cancel culture, like I said before, cancel culture is thriving due to immense support from these so-called activists. I wouldn't say that they're activists, they're mostly extremists. I would say it's extremists from the LGBTQ plus community. Most of the community people that I've met are usually quite chill, but usually the ones that are quite extremists are usually the ones from the West, especially in the US. So a real world example. Now we'll talk about a real world example on language policing. As we all know, J.K. Rowling, the author for Harry Potter books, which is quite famous. If you all know that she has been in quite of a heat because she has a stance that does not believe in transgender rights and all that. As I've said in the description, the famous author responded to an article that used the word people who menstruate. So she has a problem with gender neutral people or gender neutral callings. And then the next one would be Latinx. Latinx. What does Latinx mean? So the activist or the extremist, as I would call it, is pushing for the word Latinx to refer to the Latin American in order to be more inclusive. They would toss aside the word Latinos and Latinas because they say that it's offensive towards the non-binaries that are in the Latin American community. So now that we've talked about the examples and how damaging language policing can be, so what should we do instead of just focusing on language policing? So the first one I've highlighted is focus on intent and impact. We need to distinguish between ignorance and prejudice. Some people are just ignorant. They're not prejudiced towards any of the LGBTQ plus community. They are just ignorant. They just need a bit of guidance, But if you start to nitpick what they say and try to cancel them for every little bit of mistake that they do, like mistaking a person's pronouns, then it would, like I've said before, it would alienate allies, And the second one is to use language as a tool and not a weapon. So use language as a tool to help people understand, help the ones that are not privy to this type of knowledge, help them to understand why it is what it is right now, because the world is changing and some people are still left behind, especially the ones like our grandparents and all that. They do not get these references like different pronouns, different gender assigned at birth and identifying as different gender. They don't get that stuff. So try to use language to help them understand the goings and abouts of the recent years, what we're doing now. And the third one and the final one would be by promoting meaningful change. And this correlates to my point before by saying that we should be focusing on something that is way more important, like domestic abuse. This stuff is still happening all around the world, especially the Asia, around the world. It's still happening around the world, and it needs attention. It needs proper attention. This type of issues, equal pay, it's still an issue. It's like I've said before. So now we have reached the conclusion of this topic. So in conclusion, over-policing language can distract and divide rather than unite and empower, because the whole purpose of this language policing is, I understand that they are trying to unite people to understand them, but by doing this to an extreme level, it alienates allies and move them further away from the purpose of the so-called language policing. So the second one is, do not confuse linguistic perfection with social programs, as Ahmed 2012 said. And the final one is, rather than that, we should focus on empathy, action, and inclusion within our community. So try to include people who don't understand this type of topic into the conversation. Don't just judge them immediately. Try to have an adult conversation, a professional conversation, so that we can come to a conclusion in this type of matter. So that is all from me, and before that was my references, and I hope the ones listening could learn a bit, a thing or two about language policing and how it actually harms more than it harms than it actually does help the community nowadays. So thank you. That is all from me.